The sun shone brightly over New York City, casting long shadows on the busy streets below. People hurried along sidewalks, their minds focused on work, school, or errands. Cars honked impatiently as traffic crawled through intersections. It was just another ordinary day, or so it seemed. High above the city, something strange began to happen. The blue sky darkened, not because of clouds, but because massive shapes were blotting out the sunlight. At first, people thought it might be an unusual weather phenomenon, or perhaps a trick of the light. But then, the shapes became clearer. Enormous ships, sleek and metallic, hovered silently in the air. They were unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Fear rippled through the crowd as the ships descended lower, blocking out nearly all daylight. Phones buzzed everywhere as news alerts flooded in. Social media exploded with videos and photos of the alien vessels. Within minutes, every television station switched to emergency broadcasts. Reporters spoke frantically, trying to make sense of what was happening. No one knew who or what was behind this sudden appearance. Then came the message. A deep, mechanical voice boomed across every communication channel, from radios to smartphones. "This is the Zorathian Empire," it declared. "Your planet has been deemed unworthy of independence. You will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in your complete annihilation." The voice paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then it continued, colder than before. "Resistance is futile. Prepare yourselves accordingly." Silence followed. For a few seconds, no one moved. The streets, once filled with noise and activity, felt eerily quiet. Parents clutched their children tightly. Friends looked at each other, unsure of what to say. Panic slowly set in, spreading like wildfire. John Harper stood frozen in front of his apartment building, staring up at the sky. His heart pounded in his chest as he processed the message. Beside him, his wife, Lisa, held their teenage son, Alex, close. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to stay calm for her family's sake. "What do we do?" Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of sirens wailing in the background. John didn't answer right away. He had served in the Marines years ago, but that felt like a lifetime ago. Now, he was just a teacher, someone who spent his days shaping young minds rather than preparing for war. Still, the soldier inside him stirred, urging him to act. But how could he fight against something like this? These aliens clearly had technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. Around them, chaos erupted. Some people ran toward their homes, desperate to gather loved ones or supplies. Others collapsed to their knees, sobbing or praying. A few shouted angrily, demanding answers from leaders who likely had none to give. The world had changed in an instant, and no one knew what came next. Inside the White House, President Emily Carter sat surrounded by advisors and military officials. Her face was pale, but determined as she listened to reports coming in from around the globe. The same scene played out everywhere. Panic, confusion, and fear. She knew she needed to reassure the public somehow, but even she struggled to believe there was a way out of this nightmare. Dr. Rachel Kim, a scientist specializing in extraterrestrial research, leaned forward urgently. "Madam President," she said, her tone grave, "these aren't bluffing. The Zorothians don't negotiate. If we don't find a way to fight back, they'll destroy us." Emily nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. 72 hours wasn't much time. As the initial shock of the alien invasion began to settle, humanity's instinct for survival kicked in. Across the globe, people started organizing themselves into groups, determined to resist the Zorathian threat. In Washington, D.C., President Emily Carter called an emergency meeting with her top advisors, military leaders, and scientists. The room buzzed with tension as everyone tried to come up with a plan. Dr. Rachel Kim stood at the front of the room, pointing to diagrams and charts displayed on a large screen. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook slightly as she explained the situation. "The Zorathians are not like anything we've faced before," she said. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, but they're not invincible. We've been studying fragments of their tech from crashed probes over the years. There might be a way to use what we've learned against them." Rachel then revealed a classified project she had been working on: advanced plasma weapons. These weapons were powerful enough to pierce through the thick armor of alien ships, but there was a catch. They required enormous amounts of energy to function properly, more than Earth's current power grids could provide. However, recent breakthroughs in fusion technology offered a glimmer of hope. If they could adapt these weapons quickly, humanity might stand a chance. While the government worked on scaling up production of the plasma weapons, ordinary citizens took matters into their own hands. In small towns and big cities alike, underground resistance groups began forming. One such group was led by Jason Cole, a former Navy SEAL who now ran a mechanic shop in rural Texas. Jason had always been a man of action, and he refused to sit idly by while aliens threatened his home. He gathered a team of volunteers, farmers, factory workers, teachers, and even teenagers eager to help. Together, they scavenged materials from junkyards and abandoned warehouses, building makeshift explosives and fortifying their town. Jason knew their efforts might seem futile compared to the Zorathians' overwhelming firepower, but he believed that every little bit counted. If we can hit them hard enough, maybe they'll think twice about messing with us, he told his team during one of their late-night planning sessions. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, Karen Miller, a young engineer, known for her innovative designs, worked around the clock to upgrade old fighter jets and drones. She collaborated with other tech experts online, sharing ideas and blueprints to create AI systems capable of targeting Zorathian ships with precision. Though exhausted, Karen felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. "We may not have their tech," she muttered to herself as she soldered wires onto a circuit board, "but we've got something better: ingenuity." Back in New York City, John Harper found himself drawn into the growing movement. Though he'd left the military years ago, his experience made him a valuable asset. He joined a local militia group and began training civilians in basic combat skills. At first, he doubted whether teaching housewives and college students how to shoot a rifle would make any difference. But as he watched their determination grow day by day, he started to believe they might actually have a shot. Lisa Harper, however, wasn't so sure. She worried constantly about her husband and son, Alex, who had become obsessed with joining the fight. "You're all going to get yourselves killed," she snapped one evening after another long day of drills. "What good is this going to do if none of you come back?" John placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We don't have a choice, Lisa. If we give up now, it's over. This is our home, and we have to protect it." Despite her fears, Lisa couldn't deny the spark of hope she saw in John's eyes and in the eyes of everyone else preparing for battle. For the first time since the Zorathians arrived, people weren't just scared. They were angry, determined, ready to fight back. Across the world, similar scenes played out. Humanity, fractured and diverse, was coming together in ways no one could have predicted. 72 hours wasn't much time, but for the first time, the clock was ticking. With less than 48 hours left before the Zorathians' deadline, humanity scrambled to prepare for a fight that seemed impossible to win. In Washington, D.C., President Emily Carter approved Dr. Rachel Kim's plan to mass-produce plasma weapons, even though it meant diverting resources from other critical areas. Factories across the country were repurposed overnight to build these advanced tools of war. Engineers worked tirelessly, their faces pale with exhaustion, but their eyes filled with determination. Rachel herself barely slept. She moved between labs and production facilities, overseeing every step of the process. Her team faced countless challenges: malfunctioning equipment, shortages of rare materials, and the sheer complexity of scaling up such cutting-edge technology, but they refused to give up. "We're not just building weapons," she told her exhausted colleagues during one late-night meeting. "We're building hope." Meanwhile, Karen Miller, in Silicon Valley, made remarkable progress upgrading Earth's outdated military hardware. Using her expertise in artificial intelligence, she programmed drones and fighter jets to work together in coordinated attacks. The AI could analyze data in real time, identifying weak points in the Zorathian ships and adjusting tactics on the fly. It wasn't perfect, but it gave humanity a fighting chance against an enemy that had always relied on brute force and superior numbers. In Texas, Jason Cole put the finishing touches on his team's preparations. His group had transformed an old warehouse into a makeshift armory, stocked with everything from plasma rifles to homemade explosives. They practiced ambush strategies, learning how to strike quickly and retreat before the aliens could respond. Jason drilled his team relentlessly, knowing that hesitation or fear could cost lives. "This isn't about winning," he reminded them one evening. "It's about making them regret ever coming here." John Harper continued training civilians in New York City, pushing them harder than ever. He taught them how to aim, reload, and move as a unit. Some struggled, dropping rifles or missing targets entirely, but John didn't lose patience. "You'll get it," he said firmly, after watching a young woman fumble with her weapon, "and when you do, you'll save someone's life." Alex Harper, John's son, proved to be a natural shooter. Despite his parents' objections, he insisted on joining the fight. "I'm not sitting this out, Dad," he argued one night after another long training session. "Everyone else is doing something. Why should I sit at home and wait to die?" Lisa Harper hated seeing her family drawn into the conflict, but she couldn't deny the sense of unity spreading through their community. Neighbors who had never spoken to each other now shared meals and supplies. Strangers banded together to protect their streets. Even children helped by painting signs and delivering messages. It was as if the threat from above had awakened something deep within people: refusal to bow down without a fight. Elsewhere, pilots like Daniel Rivera prepared for what might be their final mission. Daniel spent hours in flight simulators, practicing maneuvers designed to outsmart the Zorathians' faster ships. He knew the odds were stacked against him, but he couldn't let fear take over. "If we go down," he told his fellow pilots during a briefing, "we go down swinging." As the hours passed, news of small victories began to spread. Resistance groups around the world reported successful tests of plasma weapons and AI-guided drones. People cheered, finding strength in the knowledge that humanity wasn't completely defenseless. Still, no one underestimated the challenge ahead. The Zorathians were ruthless, and their fleet loomed menacingly in orbit, a constant reminder of the destruction they could unleash. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there was a growing sense of resolve. Humanity had been pushed to its limits, but instead of crumbling, it had risen to meet the threat head-on. Every weapon forged, every strategy devised, and every person trained brought them one step closer to proving that Earth would not surrender, not without a fight. With less than 24 hours left before the Zorathians' deadline, makeshift training camps sprang up across the globe. In empty fields, abandoned warehouses, and even school gyms, men and women of all ages learned how to handle weapons, set traps, and fight as a team. These camps were far from perfect. Some lacked proper gear, others had trainers who barely knew more than their students, but they were filled with determination. People understood that this might be humanity's last stand, and no one wanted to face it unprepared. John Harper stood in a dusty field outside New York City, shouting instructions to a group of nervous volunteers. Most of them had never held a gun before, let alone fired one. John kept his tone firm but encouraging. "Don't think too much," he said, walking among the recruits as they practiced aiming at targets. "Just focus on your breathing and squeeze the trigger smoothly." His words calmed some, but others still flinched every time their rifles cracked. Nearby, Alex Harper worked alongside another teenager, loading magazines with ammunition. Though John and Lisa had argued about letting him join the fight, Alex refused to back down. "I can help, Dad," he'd insisted the night before. "You know I can." Reluctantly, John agreed, assigning him to support roles instead of frontline combat for now. Lisa stayed behind in the city, organizing food and medical supplies for those preparing to fight. She hated feeling useless, but she knew her skills were better suited to keeping people alive rather than taking lives. As she packed bandages and antiseptics into crates, she thought about her husband and son. Fear gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. Worrying wouldn't change anything. Action would. In Texas, Jason Cole led his team through a final rehearsal of their ambush plan. They drove old pickup trucks loaded with explosives to a remote stretch of highway, where they simulated attacking an alien scout ship. The exercise went smoothly until one of the homemade bombs failed to detonate. Frustrated, Jason climbed out of his truck and inspected the device. "We don't have time for mistakes like this," he snapped at the young man who had built it. The kid looked ashamed but nodded, promising to fix the problem before the real fight began. Meanwhile, pilots like Daniel Rivera prepared for what promised to be the most dangerous mission of their lives. At a military airbase, Daniel and his squadron gathered around a map projected onto a wall. Their target was clear: disable the shields protecting the Zorathian mothership so ground forces could strike its core. It sounded simple enough, but everyone in the room knew the risks. "They'll come at us hard," Daniel warned. "Stick to the plan, and we might just pull this off." Karen Miller worked non-stop in Silicon Valley, fine-tuning the AI systems, controlling Earth's drones and fighter jets. Her eyes burned from staring at screens for hours, but she didn't stop. Every second counted. When one of her assistants suggested she take a break, she shook her head. "If we mess this up," she said quietly, "people die." As night fell, communities came together in quiet moments of reflection. In New York, John sat with Alex under the stars, both of them too tired to speak. Across the world, similar scenes played out. Parents hugged their children tightly. Friends exchanged heartfelt goodbyes, and strangers shared silent nods of solidarity. No one knew what the next day would bring, but they faced it together. By morning, the atmosphere had shifted. Fear remained, but it was tempered by resolve. Humanity had done everything it could to prepare. Now, all that was left was to wait and fight. The final hours before the Zorathian deadline passed in a blur of tension and anticipation. Across the globe, humanity braced itself for what was coming. In Texas, Jason Cole's team received word that a Zorathian scout ship had entered Earth's atmosphere, heading straight for a small town near their position. This was it, their chance to strike back. Jason gathered his group in the dim light of an old warehouse. "This is our moment," he said, his voice steady, despite the nerves coursing through him. "We've trained for this. We know what to do. Let's show them they picked the wrong planet to mess with." The team loaded into pickup trucks and sped toward the outskirts of town, where the alien ship had landed. It loomed above the ground, its metallic surface shimmering faintly in the moonlight. The air buzzed with an eerie hum as Zorathian drones began patrolling the area. Jason signaled for his team to split up, each group taking a different approach, to surround the ship. One of the volunteers, a farmer named Mark, clutched a plasma rifle tightly. His hands trembled, but he forced himself to focus. Nearby, Sarah, a high school teacher turned fighter, adjusted her earpiece and whispered updates to the others. "They're spreading out," she murmured. "Stick to the plan." When the signal came, chaos erupted. Jason's team unleashed a barrage of explosives and plasma fire, targeting the alien drones first. The blasts lit up the night sky, sending shockwaves through the ground. For a moment, the Zorothians seemed caught off guard, their drones faltering under the unexpected attack. Encouraged, the humans pressed forward, dodging return fire and setting off more charges. Inside the scout ship, alarms blared as the Zorothians scrambled to respond. A group of insectoid soldiers emerged, their armored bodies glinting menacingly in the flickering light. They moved quickly, firing energy weapons that cut through the air with sharp cracks. One of Jason's teammates went down, clutching his leg, but the rest kept fighting. There was no time to stop. Not now. Mark spotted an opening and hurled a homemade explosive at the base of the ship. The device detonated with a deafening roar, causing part of the hull to buckle. Flames licked at the damaged section, and smoke poured out. "That's it," Jason shouted. "Keep pushing." As the battle raged, Alex Harper watched from a safe distance, relaying information to John and other fighters nearby. Though he wanted to join the fight, he understood his role. When he saw a Zorothian drone closing in on Sarah, he grabbed a rifle and fired, hitting the machine squarely. It exploded mid-air, giving Sarah enough time to take cover. Finally, after what felt like hours, the scout ship began to collapse. Its engines sputtered and died, and the remaining drones fell silent. Cheers broke out among Jason's team, though they were short-lived. Everyone knew this was only the beginning. Still, the victory gave them hope, proof that the Zor could be hurt. News of the successful ambush spread quickly, thanks to Karen Miller's upgraded communication systems. Resistance groups around the world celebrated the win, drawing inspiration from the bravery of the Texas fighters. President Emily Carter addressed the nation, praising their efforts and urging everyone to stay strong. "We've shown them we won't go quietly," she declared. "Let this be a message to the Zorothians. Earth will not surrender." But the aliens weren't done yet. Enraged by the loss of one of their ships, the Zorothians retaliated by obliterating several cities across the globe. The destruction was horrific, leaving millions dead and entire regions in ruins. Fires raged unchecked, and survivors wandered the streets in stunned silence. Despite the devastation, humanity refused to give up. If anything, the attack strengthened their resolve. People dug deeper, fought harder, and prepared for the battles still ahead. The war had only just begun, but so had humanity's fight for survival.